Hello and welcome to Policy Watch, your packed snapshot of the week's biggest business stories, their context, their relevance and impact. I'm Govindraj, Ethiraj. Rating agency CRISIL says logistics costs could go down by 20% if GST is reduced. That discussion is coming up first. After that, in a major policy decision, the NDA government is working on a proposal to relax norms for hiring of contractual workers. What do the unions think? That's next. Even as the goods and services tax bill hangs fire, rating agency CRISIL has come out with a new report that says the GST bill could reduce logistics costs by up to 20%. Consumer durables, consumer goods, pharmaceuticals and other sectors would benefit tremendously, even as there would be considerable freedom of movement of goods across state borders. The big question, of course, is can India afford the wait? Before we do that, here's a report.
Implementation of Goods and Service Tax or GST is not just about subsuming a multitude of indirect taxes. A study by market research firm CRISIL says a move to this regime would also ensure free flow of goods across state borders and cut down transportation and warehousing costs substantially.
I mean, under GST, if all of them get subsumed and there is a free movement of a vehicle, then the goods which, say for example, travels from Mumbai to Delhi in about 4 or 5 days could actually reach Delhi in about 2 to 3 days.
The CRISIL study says logistics costs will drop an average of 20%. In case of consumer durables, it could be as high as 30%. Other sectors like fast-moving consumer goods and pharmaceuticals could also see substantial savings. There are 3 main reasons for this as per the study. 1. Elimination of 2% CST on interstate sale of goods. Then optimization of logistics and warehousing. And thirdly, additional savings due to removal of entry points or chungi nakas. Cost of logistics would fall to just 1.5 to 2% of total sales costs. Another strong enough case for implementation of this long-pending legislation. Krishnamurthy's report for Rajya Sabha Television.
Well, joining me now is Ajay Srinivasan, Director of Research at CRISIL, and also Mitil Choksi of Choksi and Choksi. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. So, Ajay, let me begin with you. What made you think of this report?
Yeah, basically GST is going to be a path-breaking reform in the history of economic reforms in India. And today, because of the way taxation structures in India have evolved, and because of the way the taxation structures have been evolved, the companies have gone about planning their logistics in a very suboptimal manner.
Right.
If the company wants to avoid paying a 2% CST on movement of goods from one state to another, they have to maintain a warehouse in every state.
Right.
So therefore, you will notice that.
So we've created this huge infrastructure in India, and only to sort of ensure that they don't they beat the tax, and also to ensure that the goods don't get delayed at various state borders.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Right. So what's the kind of infrastructure that's been created in order to meet the sort of the previous tax regime or the current tax regime's needs?
Say for example, if you look at most of the FMCG companies, they would be having anything in the region of the large ones, about 55 to 60 warehouses.
Each?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is quite big in terms of number, and maybe
and these warehouses you are saying need not be there at all.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. I think it's not logistics efficiency which has dictated the supply chain planning. It's more dictated by a combination of logistics efficiency as well as taxation issues. Right.
So you're saying that one is, of course, the sheer number of warehouses which have been set up to get around this tax hurdle. The second is, of course, the tax advantages that you will get by sheer introduction of GST. Tell us about that.
See, basically today you have a multitude of taxes, both the central and state level. So you have an excise at the central level, you have service tax also at the central level. Then you have state level taxes such as VAT, local state tax, etc. And basically what the GST will do, it will combine all these taxes into one number, which will be called the GST rate, and it will do away with the inefficiencies which we have created because of having different taxation structures. For example, many of the manufacturing locations, for example, like a Pantnagar in UP came up solely because of the excise benefits being given.
Right. Okay. So you're saying, and this is another thing that could be equalized or harmonized word.
It creates a unified GST. Indian market.
Right. Okay. Which we know, but we don't seem to be getting there. Mitil, what are the other challenges?
Yeah. So today now, what we are facing is that you have any manufacturer or any trader. What he has today is he has a local body tax. He starts with probably a customs. Then he has a local body tax. Then from the local body tax, he has an octroi. From the octroi, he has an excise. From the excise, he has to do a CST if it's interstate.
And that's the other thing the CRISIL report brings out, the sheer number of checkposts that we have across the country. Do you have a number for that?
While we don't have a number, it could easily run into a few hundreds.
Right, and each of these 100 checkpoints, you have trucks idling, wasting fuel, and obviously goods being delayed.
Yeah. See, one issue is the kind of trucks we have in India and the road infrastructure. Without getting into it, on an average, a truck in India covers about 350 kilometers in a day. And our estimates suggest that around 1/4 of the journey time goes away because of various stoppages at city entry points and checkposts. Now, theoretically, GST provides us a very golden opportunity to do away with the checkposts altogether, because you simply have to make sure that the goods which are being carried, the taxes have been paid and they have been declared.
Right.
So if you create those kind of systems, then you can do away with the checkposts, which will easily enable a truck to cover, say, 420 to 450 kilometers on an average on a day.
Given current condition of roads.
Given the current condition of roads. And secondly, from the transporter perspective, they will be able to move on to bigger and more efficient vehicles, which will also enable them to...
So it's really a cascading effect. I mean, it affects a lot of things, including, I mean, apart from just the time taken for goods, the taxation, idling, fuel, pollution, and so on and so forth. So the question really, Mitil, to come back, I mean, can India bear the cost of this delay?
India cannot bear the cost of the delay because we are losing our competitiveness. I mean, today Europe has over the years purified their systems in a manner that there are no checkpoints. You know, it is just seamless in terms of interstates. What interstates is replicated by the inter-EU.
Right.
And now the question is that, okay, one aspect is we are talking of the policy and we are talking of the notifications. But parallelly, what happens to the administration? Today, the administration also has to sink in with, you know, today you have a VAT authority in UP who has a different administration mindset from a VAT authority which is in Maharashtra. So how will they sink in? Because the GST will be shared between the state and the, the center.
Right. So let me ask a common man's question. You know, if the advantages of GST rollout are so apparent and obvious, why is it that there is so much resistance from the states? Just to revisit that question.
Because today, who will want to let go of LBT? A simple example. Who will want to let go of a local body tax? Who will want to let go? The state will not want to let go of their power and control over the local taxes in terms of the local VAT and also the recovery powers. Why should they do away with those powers? That has been the fundamental issue, again doing away with powers. Whereas here it's only going to be a top-down approach.
Right. So Ajay, you've done, I'm sure, a lot of working out in this, and many people have done the workings in this, but very broadly, the kind of savings that your report suggests versus what it's costing us today, what would the numbers be like at a national level?
See, at a national level, I think the savings are more for companies which carry non-bulk goods, which manufacture non-bulk goods.
So I think consumer products is on the top.
Yeah. So any kind of consumer products, I mean, leave aside the coal and the cement and all the bulk goods, but any kind of consumer product, the savings are enormous. And on an average today, companies spend anywhere between 5 to 8% of sales on logistics costs alone. Now, potentially the logistics costs can come down by 1.5 to 2% if the GST is implemented over a period of 3 to 5 years. Now, why I'm saying 3 to 5 years is because our sense is that today also companies are not totally prepared to totally go back to a totally different structure. Suppose GST is implemented, say, by April 16. They will take.
So you're saying that to dismantle warehouses and so on.
They will take some time to create new distribution structures and architectures, and therefore most of these savings are likely to be back-ended. And therefore, the more we delay the rollout of GST, the more it is going to delay the potential savings from the economy perspective.
Mitil, are the companies you work with or talk to, are they in a mood to start relooking at their supply chain, distribution, warehouses, depots?
That is one. Secondly, the companies have already started doing research on sectoral advantages of the GST rollout, the disadvantages, which sectors are going to be affected. We've already got companies who have said, please provide us over the next 3 months complete research on what will be the implications if the GST were implemented on our businesses. So like a 2% which was referred to by Ajay, which was 2% of your sales, which translates into virtually 20% of your profits. And that is huge. And look at the efficiencies it will bring in. And add to which we are also talking of working capital blockage. Today when we pay a CST, there is a working capital blockage.
So is the benefit only to the private sector, which is why maybe there's not so much exuberance about getting this off the ground or getting it moving?
There are public sector companies also that will tend to benefit. But the larger picture is, it's not about private sector. Today we are a global player. Today we are talking of, every day you see newspaper about India and China, the growth comparisons, India is a better market. Well, better market, but then today, ease of manufacturing, ease of plug and play, as I always say, where is it? And this is one of the, avenues
and
for
that's a good point.
So,
How much of this is manufacturing weighed? It seems logical that most of, when you talk logistics, you talk manufacturing.
Correct.
Or does your report also look at other areas like services?
No, I think on the services side, it's the players who provide these kind of services. Like for example, 3PL players who provide integrated logistics services would gain. But from the company perspective, it will be mainly manufacturing companies which would gain. And if I break up this 20% number which I have talked about 15% savings will come purely because of lower warehousing and inventory carrying costs.
Okay.
And the 5% remaining will come because of the faster transit of goods, if at all we move towards the dismantling of checkposts. And we are not even talking about the third order impact of faster transit of goods on inflation.
Okay, and what could that be in your sense?
I mean, it's very difficult to put a number to it,
right.
But suppose theoretically a truck which was moving 350 kilometers a day earlier is able to move 450 kilometers, then obviously the cost of transit of goods would come down, which should get reflected in the inflation numbers.
Right, okay, so it seems like an overall win, but and yet, if I can come back to the original question, Mitil, can India bear the cost of this delay?
India cannot bear the cost of this delay, and we have to move fast if we are a global player and if we want to be competitive. Add to what was mentioned, one of the other efficiencies that we lack today are set-offs. Today you cannot set off a service tax against a VAT.
Right.
Whereas once a GST comes in, you will be able to set off a service tax against a GST. I mean, look at the efficiency in terms of optimization. Today we are talking of optimization. Now the question is, yes, will it be a burden on the exchequer? That's fine. You increase the GST rate. I mean, if you have to increase it from a 14% to 16%, increase it. Europe has a VAT of 20%. Increase it. If that is required for the exchequer, you increase it. But the question is simplify. Simplify it in a manner that there is complete certainty. You're sure that
there is
this
some
will
concern, Mitil, that we are going ahead with a structure which is still not the most friendly. One school of thought feels that we should go ahead either ways. The other school of thought obviously feels that let's get the whole structure sorted out and then only launch.
I don't think we follow the Western model where they study everything in detail and then only they go into the swimming pool. I mean, they study everything. We follow the model where just jump and you will learn to swim all by yourself. It will evolve and it will evolve, and anyway it always evolves. In India, once there is something, there might be some PIL filed, there will be some objection raised by some party, some issue.
Or the number of exceptions to GST. I mean, I think you've talked about tobacco, for instance, which obviously many states will have.
Correct.
And alcohol. But what if some more get added later on? Is that a concern?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the more goods you add to the exempted list, the more inefficient it becomes. I mean, for example, if you look at even fuel, for example, the variation in sales tax across states is so high that truckers would prefer certain states to go and fuel their vehicles. So they would obviously like a single rate wherein it doesn't make a difference to them where they go and.
But you already have differential pricing, right? I mean, in any case, fuel costs different in different states.
I'm saying that's an issue.
Yeah.
Because truckers would go and want to fill fuel in some other state rather than going to a state where sales tax levies are high. Therefore, it doesn't make the system totally efficient. So the more goods you have out of GST, the more it disturbs the level playing field.
Right. So let's sum up. So the report says that GST will cut logistics costs by 20%. You're arguing that logistics costs currently have a greater benefit for private companies, but also for governmental organizations and government companies. Is there a sense of what it could do to GDP overall? I mean, there are some figures that have been quoted in the past, but what's the overall economic benefit that can happen?
See, I think
if it goes through in the smooth way that we want it to.
Yeah, I think easily it can add 1 percentage point to your GDP growth over a period of 3 to 5 years. And in other countries also we have observed that the benefit does play out over a period of time. But it all depends upon how soon you move to a structure which is completely clear and free of anomalies. Like for example, this additional 1% tax which is being talked about, it's actually CST by another name. So if you have this 1% tax even for 2 years, it would further elongate the benefit from the economy perspective.
Okay, Mitil, last word. What do we need to do now?
What we need to do is come out with pilot rules from 1st of January. I mean, again, I talk of radical things, and 1st January to 31st March, come up with pilot rules, start implementing the pilot rules, see what are the problems that are face exposure drafts, throw in your, towel, throw in your, comments, and effective from 1st of April, at least first level filtered, rules should be in play so that the process should start.
Right. Process should start. There's a lot of savings ahead, as this very interesting CRISIL report shows, and hopefully things will get moving faster than have been so far. We need to take a break here, but coming up on the other side, we talk about some of the challenges companies are facing because of hiring temporary workers. Stay with us. Welcome back to Policy Watch. In a major policy decision, the NDA government is working on a proposal to relax norms to hire contractual workers. If this comes through, companies will be allowed to hire workers on short or fixed-term contracts. Here's a report.
It's a move the government hopes will enable ease of doing business in India and thereby encourage investment while opening up the job market. Regulations for hiring of contract workers are to be relaxed in a new bill to be moved in the cabinet soon. It would make it tougher for workers to form unions or go on strike. As a part of the proposed revamp, a factory employing fewer than 300 workers will be allowed to lay off workers without government permission. On the other side, severance packages will be enhanced and a minimum wage will be put in place. The changes, if approved by Parliament, will be the biggest economic reform since India opened its economy in 1991. A Labour Ministry official said, and I quote, "The NDA government's central idea is to create jobs and encourage investment, and labour reforms are seen as one of the factors to facilitate ease of doing business as well as to bring in flexibility. But getting it through Parliament won't be easy, with stiff opposition to such a move long brewing among labour activists and left parties. Trade unions allege that companies are already violating labour rights and the proposal would legitimize transgressions.
Trade unions are fighting against it, telling them you are violating the law. Now you are giving an opportunity by amending the statute and giving an opportunity to the employers for hire and fire as they require. And so one worker will be there for example, 1 year or 2 years, and he will be sacked and another person will take that place. And so there is nobody to question that.
सरकार दुनिया का जो अनुभव है उससे भी सीखना नहीं चाह रही है, एक गलत प्रकार की परंपराएं डालने जा रहे हैं। वास्तव में इसके कारण ना तो औद्योगिक प्रगति आएगी। अभी रिसेंटली एक रिपोर्ट आई ILO की, वो रिपोर्ट ये कह रही है कि जहां अनिश्चितता का माहौल है वहां प्रोडक्शन पर फर्क पड़ रहा है।
Companies have long been demanding concessions against India's strong labour laws that make it difficult to respond to business downturns and enable them to stay small. NDA-1 under Atal Bihari Vajpayee had even introduced flexibility in labour laws through an executive order in 2003, but it was reversed in 2007. Can it find a more permanent place this time? Krishnamurthy's report for Rajya Sabha Television.
Well, joining me now is Sukuma Damle, General Secretary of the All India Trade Union Congress Maharashtra, and Dr. R. Krishnamurthy, Director of the Industrial Relations Institute of India. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. So, the big question that we are asking is, obviously, first of all, is this time that we brought in a certain amount of flexibility in labour contracts?
Yeah, I think, from the time of liberalization, Manmohan Singh had said that he will be coming out with an exit policy. But because the government didn't have a majority, they could not push through any reforms.
Right.
This is the first time, you have a situation where this issue is being addressed, and a prelude to some of these things have already happened by way of changes that have taken place in Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, and also in Maharashtra. So the hope and expectation is that yes, Modi with his majority can do something for the employers in terms of restructuring the archaic labour laws.
I'm going to come to who's going to get hurt in a moment, but who benefits? I mean, what is the impact?
Immediate benefit is for the employers, and particularly all the small scale industries and others, which he is trying to revive in a very big way. So many of the changes, like for example, the Factories Act amendment, to make it from 20 to 40, from 10 to 20. Then this Contract Labour Act, minimum which was there earlier. If you see even Andhra Pradesh, they had for every 5 workers or more you have to register. They have increased it to 50. So basically, what they are talking about is less of controls, less of regulation, and freedom to engage people as you want.
Okay, or disengage as the case may be.
Yes.
Okay, let me put this question to you. So who gets hurt with this, and why are the unions concerned?
Obviously, because if the restrictions are there, your employment is protected a little bit. But I must point out that though laws were there in place, they were not implemented. The implementing machinery is next to nil.
Okay.
So
when
really,
you say laws, you mean?
Like Industrial Relations,
Okay.
Industrial Disputes Act, Contract Labour Act, Factories Act, and so on. What you mentioned just now, that there were earlier limits where it will apply. Factories Act, for example, if it is using power, it would apply if you have 10 workers or more. Now it will be increased to 40. So applicability will be decreased to that extent. Some factories will go out of the purview of Act.
Right.
But all that is just technical. In practice, it wasn't working anyway.
Right.
It was not being applied.
Yeah. So that's why the question. So why would there be concern then, if in any case the industry had designed itself out? Yeah.
I mean, to look at it like that is not correct. It should be applied. The laws are there in place. They should be applied. This is what we say. And that they were not being applied is a fact of life.
Okay.
So really, I don't understand the hue and cry made by the employers who say that you should change labor laws. You should change. They were not implementing anyway.
Right. Okay. So now let me ask you the other question then. So assuming if this goes through in this format, where there will be more flexibility with employers to hire contractual workers or workers on short-term, fixed-term contract, is that a good thing?
I wouldn't say that.
Okay. Why?
You should have permanent employment, some assurance that your employment will last. I'll give you an example. This fixed term contract was being used probably from around 2003, when industrial employment standing orders were amended, and this category of fixed term contract was brought in. And in Mazgaon dock they started using it. Now it has been rescinded, but it's still going on. The practice is going on. This is what I say, that implementation doesn't take place.
Right.
It's not there anymore in the standing orders, but it's still being used. The result is that young people are working on 2-year contracts for 4-5 terms now.
Okay.
For 10 years they have been working.
Right.
They say that it is connected with a project, say submarine project and so on. But that goes on for years. And
Right. So you're saying there's no sense of permanence and
so they are not getting married at all.
Okay.
They live like that. And what is being said, I read that in the papers, that they'll be paid on the same
terms as permanent.
As permanent, but that's not true. They get after every term it expires, they begin with the same salary which they earned 2 years back.
Okay, got it.
That's not good.
Okay, so how would you respond to that? I mean,
Yeah,
that basically the sense of permanence is missing. Young people, for instance, and that's an interesting point, that they can't even get married because they don't see a horizon on compensation and salary.
Yeah, there is a problem in the sense that, but let's look at overall numbers. You look at the way the Contract Labour Act is. It was framed in 1970. No major changes have taken place, but outsourcing has emerged as a very major issue. So look at IT as industry. Almost 3 billion employees now working in that industry. More than 3 million employees working in that industry, primarily because of the type of changes that were ushered in. America outsourced much of its activity to India. So you got a large
IT industry is an example of an industry which had the flexibility and therefore could grow.
Yes.
How would you respond to that?
More importantly, his point he talked about of fixed term employment. You look at some of the laws that are there. For example, Chapter 5B, which places restrictions on even layoff. If I want to lay off, if I've got more than 100 workmen, I need government permission for layoff, and never will come on time. So industry needs a way to adjust to this. So where did this come from? This came from contract labor. Casual, you can take very casually, terminate anytime you don't want, and therefore the number of contract labor has expanded, exponentially. So you look at a company like, say, Teamlease, they have more than 1 lakh of people, working on their roles.
Right.
Company like AITUC,
only hiring out people to other companies.
Temping firms. Basically, they are temping firms.
Yeah.
And if you see the growth of these companies, it's something significant. You look at today the employment in many of the manufacturing companies. Earlier, you used to have a situation, where contract labor used to work, and if you see the proportion of contract labor, it used to be 20% or 30%. Today it is 5 or 10 times the permanent workforce. Why?
Okay.
And it has happened because of one is the ease. I can get rid of people when I don't want. I don't want a permanent headcount. Permanent headcount I can't remove. Contractor labor doesn't figure into your numbers. But these things are changing.
Right. So Mr. Damle, I think the point that is being made is that industry has evolved. It is going to evolve further. I mean, IT is one example. Industry needs the flexibility, and it seems to have demonstrated, at least in some cases, that where it has had the flexibility, it has actually grown net.
the example that he gave in manufacturing, for example. Now the contract workers are really 5 to 10 times the permanent worker. Look at their salaries. The contract worker, I'll give you an example right now. It's going on. A strike is going on in Reliance. I don't know whether I should name it. It's really going on.
Yeah.
There are 2,200. There are 2,200 contract workers and 250 permanent workmen. Permanent workmen get about 70,000 a year, month, and contract workers get 8,000 a month. That is the difference.
Doing the same thing? Maybe the roles
absolutely the same thing.
Okay.
We have reports of the Labour Commission.
Actually, it is reverse. You know, they work more. They give you more output. They are more efficient.
Okay.
But they get 1/3 the pay of the permanent worker. So what he said is right.
So this is what's going on. Now, this is benefiting the industry, of course. Not in terms. They say that it's in terms of flexibility of labor. It's in terms of just extraction of work without paying. Yeah, all the states have on their own changed the laws.
Right. Okay. So we've almost run out of time. Let me get a last word in. Are you in favor of this sort of?
I think let's understand this. Maharashtra as a state, has a lot of regulation. You have the MRT and PLP Act. You've got regulations which restrict the units like Mathadi Labor Act, Private Security Guard Board Act, and there is a need for change. To get a buy-in, you need also this labor to support it.
Right.
So it's very important to get their views. But we need to do what is called radical course correction to bring about some changes in law, without which Make in India and Made in India will not happen.
Right. Okay. So last word, absolutely. Are you saying that absolutely no change at all, or some change if you are taken into confidence?
I would say that with this self-certification, all these changes and all that are not going to matter at all. Self-certification, that I am following everything that is on. So no problem at all for employers.
Right.
Just certify that I am following all laws.
Right. So you're saying that therefore you're opposed to it, but what you will propose is what?
I would propose
quickly,
implementation of laws.
Okay. Existing laws.
They don't really hold up the industry at all. No.
Okay. Fair enough. So we've run out of time. Thank you very much for joining us. That's all we have time for on Policy Watch this week. We'll be back next week, same time. Thanks for watching.